Next I'm going to do is to create a new component for connection. So for that, I'm going to create a new component in the components folder as like this way, that is connection. In this component, we have to list the users and I'm going to give a button for establishing connection with that user. Okay. So for that, first of all, I'm going to do is, we know that as of now in the database, there is separate collection for separate users. So what I'm going to do next is to create a single collection for all users. Then we can establish the connection. So I'm going to the sign in component and I'm going to change this second argument, that is the name of the collection, and to give it as users itself, that is a static name. And also I'm going to change these things, these same things in other components, like in the middle component also I'm giving the name of the collection as users, and also in the main component I'm going to give as the name of the collection as users. So here you can see that I'm going to give the name of the collection as users. Okay, so next I'm going to do is, whenever the user is logging in, the a single collection will be created named users. So I'm going to delete these collections as like this way. Then next I'm going to log in. So here I'm going to give the name and the designation. So at that time you can see that a new collection will be created and a new user will be added to that collection. Okay, as like this way. So I'm going to log in from other Google account as like this way. So at that time now you can see that here a new document will be created for the second user. Okay. So next I'm going to do is to list the users in this database. So here we know that as of now there is two users or two Google account. So I'm going to list the users in the connection component. So for that, first of all, I'm going to give the connection route to the connection component in the app.js as like this way. I'm giving the path as connection or connect and the element, that is connection. Okay, so now you can see that a new route is given in the app.js for connection component. And also next I'm going to do is, we know that in the sidebar there is a section for connection. So I'm going to use link component from the React router DOM, and I'm going to pass this connection into that link component. And I'm giving a two props here as like this way as connect. So now we can see that I'm going to import this from the React router DOM. So now we can see that in the, here is the connection. So when I click these connections, we will be redirected to the connection component. Here we need to list the users. So for that, first of all, I'm going to do is to list the users by using the getDocs function from the Firebase. So I'm going to define a function get users, which is an arrow function, and I'm going to use the get docs function from the Firebase itself. Okay, so here I'm going to use async await and try catch and I'm going to paste these inside this try and console.error here. Okay, so next I'm going to do is to call this getUsers function inside the use effect as like this way, and I'm going to define another variable, and I'm giving the name of the variable as user ref, which is equal to collection. I have imported the collection function from the Firebase. So we need to list the all documents from a particular collection. So for that purpose, we need to use the collection function. And as a first argument, I'm going to pass the database, and as a second argument, I'm going to pass the name of the collection. Then next, I'm going to pass this user ref into this getDocs function. So I'm going to assign this into a data variable as like this way, and I'm going to console that data. So now you can see that I'm taking the console here. Here is the query snapshot. Okay, so in this, we will get the document from this docs, but now as of now, it is not in the form that we can directly use. So we need to convert it into the form which we can use directly. Okay, so for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to map through this data. So for that, I'm going to define a variable that is filtered data, which is equal to data dot docs dot map, and I'm going to map through this as like this way. And I'm passing the ID also into it as doc.id. Next, I'm going to define a state, and I'm giving the name of the state as user data, set user data as like this way. And I'm going to pass this filter data into this set user data. Okay, so now we can see that I'm going to console the filter data here, or user data state. At that time, you can see that in the console, here is the user data. So we will get the details of the each user as like this way. So next I'm going to do is to map through this user data in this section. So I am going to map through user data dot map, and we will get the details of each user. So I'm going to show that details of each user, or list the details of each user using a list component from the material UI. So I'm going to use the paper first as like this way. Inside this paper, I am going to use the list component from the material UI. Okay, then next I'm going to use the component named list item, and inside this list item I'm going to use the avatar first as like this way, and as a second item I'm going to use the list item text. Okay, so in this avatar is as like that of the image tag in the HTML or in the JSX. So I'm going to give source here. Here we will get the source as user dot profile image. Here is it. Okay, so So next I'm going to do is to pass the text into this list item text. So for that we can use two props into or pass two props into this list item text, that is primary and secondary. So as a primary I am going to pass the user dot username, and as a secondary props I am going to pass the user dot designation. Okay, so now you can see that in the connection component, here is the list of the two users with their profile picture, name, and the designation. Okay, so I am going to use another button here. So in the list item itself, after list item text, I am going to use the button from the material UI itself as connect, and I am giving the variant as outlined, and size as small. Okay, so now you can see that here is the button for connect. Okay, so as of now, it is listing all the users from the database. You can see this. But actually, we don't want to list the current user here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to the connection component, and I'm going to use the filter method to filter the user. So for that, I'm going to do is to first comment this whole, and here I am going to filter first in the user data as like this way, and I am taking the each user, then I am filtering by user dot id, which is not equal to auth dot current user dot uid. Okay, then I am going to map through it. Here I am giving as other user, that is a filtered user. So inside this I am going to pass this return completely, and I am going to remove this. I'm going to change this user. We have to use the other user from the map here. So I'm going to copy this and paste it in the place of user. So now you can see that it is showing only the other user or the filtered user in this connect or connection component. That is a users other than the user who is logged in now. Okay. So in the other Google account, you can see that here it is showing the other user. Okay. So next what I'm going to do is, we know that this user is Steve and the other user or other Google account is Bill. So what we have to do is, whenever the Steve click the connect button here, we need to pass an invitation to the Bill. In the invitation component or invitation page, the Bill need to get the request from the Steve. For that, what I'm going to do is, in the connection component, I'm going to define a new function, that is send request. So in that function, what I'm going to do is, when I click this connect button, at that time, through that function, we need to pass the details of this user, that is the user Steve, into this Bill's database or Bill's collection in the database. So for that, I am going to create a new sub collection in the Bill's document or Bill's collection. So here in the connection component, I am going to define a new function, that is send request. as an arrow function, and I'm going to use the add doc method from the Firebase. And I'm giving here async await and try catch. Then I'm going to pass the console.log error, and also I'm giving the add dog function inside this try. Okay, so now next I'm going to do is to call the send request function inside this button, inside the on click of this button, as like this way. Next, what I'm going to do is here I'm going to define a variable that is request doc as like this way, and I'm going to use the doc function from the Firebase, and as a first argument I'm going to pass the database, and as a second argument I'm going to pass the name of the collection. So the name of the collection is users. Then next I'm going to do is to give this request doc as a first or the first argument of this add doc function. And as a second argument, I'm going to pass the object. Then inside this object, I'm going to do is to pass the details of this current user. So the details of the current user can be get from the sidebar. That means we have already used this link for connecting to this component. So inside this link, we can pass the details of this current user by using the state. So I'm going to pass this as state. So I'm going to pass the username, profile image, and the designation into this connection component. So as like this way, username. So I'm going to give the username completely as like this way from here, comma, then designation as like this way, comma, and profile image. So here we have passed the username, designation, and the profile image. Okay. So next I'm going to use that three details here. So for that I need to use the use location hook from React Router DOM. So I'm going to define variable location, and I'm going to use the or assign this use location hook into it. I have imported the use location from the React Router DOM as like this way, and I have assigned the use location into the location variable. So next I'm going to console this location here. So at that time you can see that I'm going to take the console, and in the console you can see that I'm going to click on this connection component. So here we get the, first of all, I'm going to remove this console. Okay, so now you can see that here is the details such as username, designation, and the profile image. So we can directly pass these details into this add doc as a second argument. So I'm going to take it as location dot state dot username, state dot designation, and state dot profile image. So here I am passing the username as location dot state dot username and designation as location dot state dot designation itself and profile image as location dot state dot profile image. Okay, so now we have passed these details into the add doc. Okay, so here we are going to create a sub collection. So as a third argument, we need to pass the ID. So we are going to create a sub collection in the collection of bill. So the collection or the ID of the bill can be get from here. That is this other user dot ID. So we need to pass that ID by using the send request function. So I'm going to pass that ID here as like this way. That is user dot ID. And we can take that ID as user ID in the here as a parameter, that is user ID. Okay, it is other user. Okay, then next I'm going to pass the user ID as the third argument as like this way, user ID. Okay, then next I'm going to define another variable, that is connect ref, which is equal to, I'm going to use the collection function from the Firebase as like this way. And as a first argument to this collection function, I'm going to pass the request doc variable. And as a second argument, I'm going to give the name of the sub collection that we are going to create. So I'm going to give the name of the sub collection as request in. Okay. So next I'm going to replace this request doc by using this connector of, and here I need to change the name of the profile image as like this way, because we are getting location.state.profile image as like this way. So now I am going to click on the connect button. At that time you can see that a new sub collection will be created in the name request in. Okay, here is the sub collection. That sub collection is only created for this user, the user bill. Okay, so in that you can see that in the document the details of the other user, that means the user who requested for connection. Okay, here the user who requested for connection is Steve. Okay, so in the bills document we can see the details of the Steve as like this way. So next what I am going to do is, in the other Google account, that means in the bills Google account, I'm going to show the details of the Steve in the invitation page. For that, I'm going to create a new component named invitation.js as like this way. So now you can see that I am going to use the same UI of connection for this invitation also. So I'm going to copy this complete component from the material UI and I'm pasting it here. Okay. So next I'm going to do is to give root to this invitation component in this app.js. So I'm using the root from React Root Atom, and I'm going to give the root as like this way for invitation. That is invite, and I'm giving the component as like this way. So now you can see that I'm giving the component that is invitation. And also in the sidebar, I'm going to, okay, so here it is showing some error in this invitation. So I'm going to remove this source, primary, secondary, on click, etc. Okay, next I'm going to import these components from the material UI, that is paper, list, list item, avatar, list item text, button. Okay, so next I'm going to do is in the sidebar, I'm going to use the link component as like this way to the invitation also. So I'm going to pass this invitations title into this link, and I'm going to give the two props as invite. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the invitations link here. So at that time you can see that we will be redirected to the invitation. This is the invitation component. Here you can see the structure, that is the profile image and also the button connect. So I'm going to change that button in the invitation, that is I'm going to use two button here, that is for one is for accept, another is for reject. Okay, so you can see that here it is two button is there here. So I'm giving the variant of the accept as contained. Okay, then I'm giving an SX, that is margin left to 5px. Okay, so next I'm going to show you the details of the user who requested for connection here. So here I'm going to define the function. I'm giving the name of the function as show request as like this way as an arrow function, and I'm going to use the get doc get docs from the Firebase as like this way. I'm giving async await, try catch, console.log error, and get docs into this try. Okay, so now you can see that I'm going to call this function inside the use effect. So in the use effect, I'm going to call the function, that is show request as like this way. Then next I'm going to define a variable request ref, which is equal to the collection. I'm going to use the collection method or collection function from the Firebase, and as a first argument I'm going to pass the database which I have imported from the setup, and as a second argument I'm going to pass the name of the collection, that is first collection, main collection, that is users, and as a third argument we need to pass the ID. So the ID is the ID of the current user itself, that is auth.current user, so .uid current user dot uid as like this way. And next I'm going to define another variable, that is I am giving the name of the variable simply as a request in ref, which is equal to collection. Here I am going to change this collection to doc. Okay, and next I am going to give the first argument to this collection as request ref, and as a second argument I am going to pass the name of the collection, that is sub collection, that is request in. Okay, so now I am going to pass this request in ref into this get docs function. Next, I'm going to assign the get docs into this data, and I'm going to log data like console.log data as like this way. So here you can see that this is the invitation component or page. Here I am going to take the console. You can see the query snapshot. So I am going to define another variable that is filter data, and I am going to map through the data.docs. Here I am going to take the each document, and I am going to pass the, or I am going to call the doc.data method here, comma, I am going to pass the ID also, that is doc.id. Okay. Then I am going to pass this filtered data into a state. So for that I am going to define a state, that is I am giving the name of the state as user, set user, which is equal to useState, an array. Then I am going to pass this filtered data into that user or set user, that is set user filtered data. So now I am going to log the user here, that is console user. So in the invitation page, you can see the details of the users. So I am going to click on invitation. At that time, you can see that here is the details of the user who requested for connection. That means Steve is a user who requested for the connection to this user. That is, this is Bill. Bill got a request from Steve. Okay. Next, what I'm going to do is to show the name, designation, and the profile image of the user who requested for this connection. Okay, so for that, in this invitation component, I'm going to use this user state and map through the user state as like this way. Each user, we will get the each user here. So I'm going to use the each user for, in the source, I'm going to give as each user dot the profile image. So here you can see that this is a profile image. So I'm going to pass that directly here. So each user dot profile image, and in the list item text, I'm going to pass at primary, that is each user dot name, username. Okay, then next designation, that is as a secondary, I am going to pass the user or each user dot designation. So at that time you can see that the name of the user, the designation and profile image of the user who requested for the connection in here in this invitation component, invitation component, invitation component, invitation component.